I've got
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July 6th work session for the Sierra Vista City Council. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start tonight with the agenda for July 8th, 2021 council meeting. Of course, we start with a roll call and the invocation and the pledge. The acceptance of the agenda. Is there anything on the agenda that needs to be moved, canceled, rescheduled? Okay. Then we go on to the city manager's report. Mr. Petichik for Ms. Yarborough. Is there anything that you want to share with us?
As you know, I just got back from my trip, but we will have a JPA meeting on the 8th, so I should have some more report with regards to CCOM at that time. As you know, Mr. Michael Klein was selected by the JPA board to serve as director, and I think that will be a good hire. Of course, it does create a hole for us in another part of the organization, so we'll have to work through that as we go.
What kind of timing do you see on filling that position?
Hiring for these types of professional positions has been extremely difficult here over the past year or so. So it could be anywhere from 3 months to 9. So it's going to be.
So are we advertising already, or have we put out advertisement yet?
It went through the HR process for approvals, Mr. Mayor, and it should be advertised this week.
And we do internal first, then external, or we do them simultaneously?
I think it'll be simultaneous.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Petichik?
No, not right now.
Any questions for Mr. Petichik?
None, sir.
Okay. Next will be new business, and it's the approval of the regular city council meeting minutes for June 24th, 2021. Any additions, corrections, comments that we need to change for the meeting minutes for the 24th of June? And hearing none, we'll go on to item number 3. And I don't have a name of a briefer here, Mr. Petichik. Can you help me?
Ms. Yarborough.
Ms. Yarborough is going to be the briefer for item number 3.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and unfortunately, here we are again. So, not to completely rehash the history, but to briefly summarize, this court agreement has been in existence for 31 years. It was first entered into in 1990 at the request of the county to consolidate courts and to have the city pay for a portion of the prosecution costs. Is that right, Chuck?
Yeah.
Since that time, the agreement continued fairly unchanged until around 2010. There was a brief diversion while the city implemented the photo citation program that eventually came out. Then in 2015, the funding formula was revised again, and then in 2019, we had a number of other issues. So between 2019 and 2020, there were a couple different versions of the agreement passed. We finally ended up with one that was passed in November of 2020 by City Council and then passed by the Board of Supervisors in 2021. So that is the agreement that is being amended here today. That agreement also established the new funding formula, which I'll describe a little bit more because there's something.
I just want to break in here real quick, Victoria. I think fundamentally the changes that have occurred over time with the court agreement, and it's a good thing to have a consolidated court. I don't really have a problem with the concept. I think it's worked pretty well over the years. But initially, the agreement was just that the county courts would get our fine revenue for that. And I think over the years, fine revenue has not really produced that well, and court costs continue to go up. So a larger and larger gap between revenue and costs have been occurring over a long period of time. As Victoria mentioned, after that, they asked for an agreement which contemplated some $90,000 or so to help cover prosecution costs. So, and that was specified in the agreement, and that has now been escalating over time to the point where we got last year, where now the county is wanting, reimbursement for the total sum share of our cases that get cited into the JP5. So the fine revenue isn't there, even though it's calculated in. It continues to result in higher costs to us, but not to the point where it would be equal to running the court, ourselves, as you know. So that's kind of the historical backdrop to all of this.
And part of the reason the fine revenue decreased over the years, as we were told, is philosophies are changing in the court system as a whole, and so fine revenues started decreasing. So where are we at today? Back late last summer, early fall, Judge Conlog, who was the Superior Court judge, the presiding Superior Court judge, proposed we enter into a new type of agreement. So the consolidated court agreement would change to a court co-location agreement. And it would give the city council the right to directly appoint the justice of the peace and separate that from the consolidated agreement and recognize that they were two separate courts. So that agreement also directly appointed the justice of the peace pro tem, who was Gary Raymaker, as the justice of the peace at the expense of the county for up to 50 hours a year to hear just the city magistrate cases, of which there are about 8 to 10 a year. The funding formula was also finished at that time and adopted in that agreement, and so as Chuck said, the funding formula changed to recognize the percentage of cases that were heard in or cited into the justice court, which percentage of those were solely Sierra Vista cases, and then applied that percentage to the operating costs and the revenue. So the percentage of revenue that was received from Sierra Vista cases was then subtracted from the percentage of operating costs, which resulted in our final amount to pay to the county. So that agreement went into effect on January 1st of this year, and then the following week I got a phone call that Judge Raymaker had resigned as our city magistrate because he didn't know, and it wasn't previously known on our end or the county's end, that he'd be responsible for travel and training costs, that in the past, the justice of the peace as our magistrate would have already been going to that training. And so the administrative office of the courts had contacted the county and said that the new justice of the peace would be responsible for those as a separate judicial officer. So they would be required to go to new judge training, attend the annual conference, and so on. And this was not okay with Judge Raymaker, and so he then resigned. So Judge Dickerson, who became the presiding judge of the Superior Court on January 1st as well, we appointed, or temporarily appointed, Judge Lund as our city magistrate until such time as we could work out the amendment to the agreement, and then subsequently the agreement and contract with the justice of the peace as the city's magistrate. So the amendments to the agreement and the changes from the one that was approved in November, there's some clarifying statutory references and procedural definitions that don't change much of the agreement, just clarify some things. There has to be a change to Part D of Section 3 then. That was the part that appointed the Justice of the Peace. It changed to appoint the Justice of the Peace as the city magistrate as opposed to the pro tem. And there's an addition of Part E also in that section related to city magistrate compensation. And then it removed Parts B and C of Section 5 related to allotting time for exclusive use of the municipal court and so on. So I also wanted to point out there is the amount that is listed as our payment for next year, $281,000, is not correct. I was able to clarify today. Initially, Exhibit A that we received last week turned out to be a version that was approved by all of the cities that approved this agreement after we did. Our cost was locked in with the agreement that we passed in November of last year, so I need to make that adjustment. I found that out just before the meeting. So our total cost will be $276,807, not the amount that's currently listed in the agreement.
So instead of being 281 or whatever, it's, say again?
It's $276,807, and that amount is in your current fiscal year budget.
Okay.
And I'll have that corrected before the meeting on Thursday. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Questions or discussion? Anybody?
Just a real quick one. The 276, that's for fiscal year 21-22.
That's correct, Mr.
And then
Benning. And then-
160.
Yes, and thanks for pointing that out. The funding formula will be recalculated on an annual basis, so by March of '22, we'll be able to pull the data from the previous fiscal year to rerun through the formula, which will give us the amount for fiscal year '24. So that will happen each year by March.
Sir?
So for clarification, so the language gets kind of muddled when we say Sierra Vista Precinct number 5 or Justice Court number 5. Are we talking about municipality cases or anything cited by our police and municipality cases?
In what respect, Mr. Benning?
Because in one aspect, all city ordinance, I'm on paragraph 2, subsection C. All city ordinance violations shall be filed by the Justice Court's 5 city database. All other cases filed by city police department will be filed in Justice Court 5's database. Sierra Vista Justice Court 5 shall be responsible for collection of county fines, charges, restitution. When we say Sierra Vista Justice Court 5,
All
that's
cases.
all cases.
It's all cases.
Okay, so then, and the reason I'm asking, so then when we go back to paragraph 3, subsection E, the compensation of a city magistrate shall be sole responsibility of the city. Are we talking about all cases or municipality? Code ordinance and fines.
All of our cases.
All the city cases.
Okay,
But he's also gonna handle county cases within, also,
exactly.
yeah.
So, which we're
but
compensating
but that,
for.
no, we're not compensating for county cases. That county's compensating.
No, I mean, for our
county- yeah,
cases,
yeah.
we're compensating them at 276, right? Because we're including
The
that
court.
extra of 46 to 47% of what our cases are. Am I
I don't
missing
understand
something?
I don't understand your question.
So that 276,000, it goes towards court operating fees, court security, utilities, prosecution, defense, and in total, which includes the JP5's salary.
That in
Part of it.
You're correct in that the formula for compensation of justices of the peace is calculated into the 276, which I believe is $105,000. So we are paying a share of that.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about the next share.
Yeah.
on the next.
Just getting ready. I'm making sure my ducks are in a row.
You're tracking.
And on paragraph 3, subsection E, the compensation of the city magistrate shall be the sole responsible for the city, responsibility of the city. Now, that's the next area we're going to be discussing. However, we've been told that there's 8 to 10 cases a year, and prior, we were going to have 50 hours of
Up to
Mr.
50 hours.
Raymaker for a year, and we were going to pay Mr. Raymaker 50 hours, and he's an actual attorney?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay.
So.
I just
let me-
try to
let me-
clarify that because
Yeah.
I've got some comments for our next.
Well, let me clarify that because it is a good question, Mr. Johnson. Mayor Mueller, Councilman Johnson, the compensation, for the JP, we were looking at it just the way you described. Well, we only have so many city, code and ordinance violations that get cited into the court. And as we discussed at a prior meeting, the county doesn't view it that way. They view all of our cases, be they, criminal or civil traffic, whatever it is, to be that part of that mix. So they view the whole thing as, our responsibility as opposed to just those cases that we talked about before. So we obviously have a difference of opinion about that, but that's one that we're not.
Well, Mr. Petuchik, by paying this $276,000, we are paying our fair share.
46%
I mean,
share.
I don't understand. All we're asking now is just to handle the handful of cases per year on behalf of the city.
I can't say that I disagree with you.
Okay, all right, okay, as long as we're on the same page, because that's the way I'm looking
We
at it.
are on the same page.
Okay.
Definitely.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Johnson, there was a difference of opinion when we first started discussing this, that we were only discussing those 8 to 10 cases that were solely city ordinance-related cases. And as Chuck was saying, the opinion of the county is that we were not talking about only those 8 to 10 cases. We were talking about any cases that could theoretically be cited into a city magistrate court, which includes all of the civil cases. So all of the traffic cases, all of the misdemeanors, all of those cases, and that should be included in our calculation, which has a little more application when we talk about the city magistrate contract, which is the next item. But-
Now, is the county appearing, or are they positioning that our civil traffic cases are considered city cases? Is that what they're citing?
Yes.
Well, what is the purpose of JP5 if they don't take every case within their jurisdiction?
Well, I think one of the real, sticky issues here deals with, state law and how the courts are set up. And I like to use the analogy of, where the mayor lives. The mayor, before he bought his house, he annexed his property into the city, he could run for mayor as a city resident, et cetera. Well, his neighbor is in the county, okay? So the sheriff will cite cases into JP5, our police department will do the same. But because we are organized as a municipality, we have the privilege of setting up our own court. So the county views that as, well, they're running our court for us. Therefore, as a city resident, you have the privilege of not only paying JP5 through your property tax bill, but now you have the privilege of paying more through this agreement. That the county resident living next door to the mayor doesn't have to pay.
Are you done?
Right now?
Yeah.
And if we know, I'm not sure if we do, you mentioned that after our agreement, the 276,000, the rest of the JPs, if you would, they joined suit and paying their fair share, basically the same formula as us. Are they paying additional fees to the JP5 for their cases?
For the JP, their JP.
JP 1, 2, 3, or 4.
For their cases.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Benning, yes, each city has a separate agreement with their magistrate and is paying them an additional cost for being their magistrate.
Okay.
Do we know the basis of the, Ms. Yarborough, do we know the basis of those agreements? I mean, we're going to get thrown a number in our next item, and I'm just a little concerned that perhaps we're going to be paying more than our fair share.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Johnson, we do know what some of the amounts are, but one of the issues with the court agreement that the county wanted was to take that entirely out of the agreement and make it an agreement solely between the city and their magistrate.
Okay. Well, I'm asking a lot of these questions so we have a record of this conversation. So I'm not trying to make life miserable for anyone. I just want it known that someone watching on our video understands what we're facing here. I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'm good, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right, questions? All right, and I guess we'll move on to the next item, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to the last item, the next item to follow on is the employment contract with the Justice of the Peace for Precinct 5 as the city magistrate. The city's code of ordinances require you to appoint a magistrate, and it also states that the term will be for 2 years. And so you will see that in the employment contract, the employment term actually starts January 1st, and it goes through January 1st of 2021, and will go through December 31st of 22. And the amount to be paid to Judge Kerfman is $52,500 a year for his services as city magistrate, and he requested that amount as half of his current salary. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
I just wanted to comment, when you say that's the number he arrived at because it's half of his current salary.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So he's still getting 100 and whatever it is, thousand.
5,000.
Plus
105,
plus
sir.
the 52. Okay. Just want to make sure that was clear for the record. Okay. Yes, sir.
Do we know or have the formula? I know when we had our meeting, based on a certain number of cases, depends on the state salary for Justice of the Peace. And which based off the caseload of JP5, it makes that $105,000.
Well,
If I get my question, I guess, if you could answer, if we take 46% off of that, what off that caseload, what would be the state mandate pay for Justice of the Peace 5?
let me try to give you some context, Mr. Benning and Mr. Mayor. The judge's salary is based on a system of judicial credits, okay? And in our discussions with Judge Kerfman, he explained that the number of cases generated by Sierra Vista doubles his workload, essentially. He has a workload of judicial credits just through the county cases that qualifies him for the $105,000 salary. So theoretically, then a fair price would be $210,000. So so basically, we were looking at it as well. Judge Dickerson's last number with us was 28,750, and we were looking at it like you were, Mr. Benning. Well, 46% would be somewhere around 48,000 or somewhere around that number. And then he came back around 60. We talked some more, and then we agreed on half, the 52.5, which was about as close as I could get it to that number that you're talking about.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this issue. I know Mr. Kerfman. I met him when he was running for JP. I have no axe to grind with him, but he has to take those cases. It's within his jurisdiction. So basically, he's asking $52,500 for 8 to 10 cases a year, or 50 hours if we use the Mr. Raymaker's formula. And I can't support signing a contract for that. I mean, we're here to protect the taxpayers, and I think it's absorbent that we're being held hostage by an elected official. And that's how it works. Did we have a formal agreement like this with Judge Dickerson?
We did not, Mr.
We did
Johnson.
not. But so I think we're setting a dangerous precedent right now with this, because it'll just continue.
I do too.
I can tell you right now, I will not support it tomorrow or on Thursday.
Well, and again, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Johnson, it comes down to how they view things versus how we view things. And they view it as, that the sum total of the work generated by Sierra Vista is, what we would have to deal with in our own court setting. Therefore, they should be compensated for, the proportion of the totality of that. And that, and we viewed it as, well, you have to take the cases anyway, as you said, but these are the other ones that are strictly magistrate.
Well,
You know,
I mean,
I-
if you don't like the salary, don't run for the position.
Listen, I have to agree with that too.
The problem we run into here is all the judges have to sign our court agreement. That means Judge Dickerson and Judge Kirk.
Does any other council persons have an idea other than this big mouth over here in the corner? I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
I know when we were originally, I'm gonna go back to, because they kind of intertwine to item number 3. When this first came about and we started talking about it, it was approximately 1.7 to stand up our own court and approximately 850,000 annually to run. Was that the rough numbers I think we
That's
were
in the
talking
ballpark.
about?
Yeah, although I think the 850 is probably light now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. So right now, currently, we pay the 281 on top of the 270 that they receive from revenue. So approximately 300 and, $550-ish dollars. I think 570 and 281, 270 and 281, about 550,000. And then we throw a $52,000 on top of that, we're looking at 600,000. In my mind, if we did that route, we're not held accountable and we're not held to the fire by any other entity but our own. So we don't have this issue 5 years from now when Judge Smith thinks he deserves more money because we grew from 50,000 to 60,000. So we eliminate this precedent being set by we're compensating for what the state's already saying you're responsible for, and we're compensating for it. And then it goes back to the tax, Mr. Mayor being in the city, his neighbor being in the county, we're getting taxed double for the same process. Where I just can't look someone in the eye and say that's the right thing to do in our city. It's kind of how I look at it, where, and I guess I understand where Mr. Kerfman's coming, but even if we did pay this county a set sum of money for the percentage that we use, but provide our own city magistrate, would that change the original document? Because we're still, basically for item 3, if we said, okay, we're gonna pick our magistrate from an internal hire, we're gonna put an ad out and we're gonna hire or elect our own judge to fill that magistrate position, minus whatever percent we're paying to the JP5 for those cases, for him to hear those cases to begin with. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure what you're asking, but
So-
my understanding is that right now, if we appoint Mr. Kerfman, he is our magistrate, and that's what the first agreement says. My understanding is the first agreement says we do appoint our own magistrate.
We do, so we can appoint our own, so it doesn't, but
Yeah,
Is
but
the
the second,
first
the second
agreement-
document appoints Mr. Kerfman, but again, normally in the past, we've picked an attorney that is already on his staff or works
Roger.
for him, or in fact was Judge Dickerson in the
Yes,
past. Because it primarily was easier, and I don't know if it would have been cheaper or not, quite frankly.
and I don't know either, Mr. Mayor, and that's the
Yeah,
problem.
And the way Judge Dickerson did it is he gave us a number, we put it in the budget, you voted on the budget.
And we didn't
that
have
was-
and the thing is, we didn't have
a
the,
formal agreement.
we didn't have the analysis either at that point in time, because there was issues with costs and record keeping at the court itself. So,
well,
Well, essentially what you're talking about, Mr. Benning, is a situation where, we have the capital costs and startup costs associated with standing up our own court, which, was at 1.7 or whatever, that number will end up being. Plus you've got, when you add the fine revenue in, probably about $500,000 a year difference between, operating our own court and going with an agreement such as this. So it really comes down to, is it a dollars and cents issue or an issue where you want to control your own destiny somewhere in the future? I don't know what's going to happen in the future with this agreement because we have so very little control over it. And, you know, it's possible that costs could continue to go up, as you suggested, and it may get to the point where, from a financial standpoint, you know, that is something we're probably, you know, gonna need to look at down the road.
Yeah.
Right now isn't that time, at least financially, though.
Okay.
Mr.
One
Mayor?
final.
You finish your final, we'll go back to Greg.
I guess my biggest question, I'm right now in the same boat as Mr. Johnson. I don't think I'm going to say yes to this. If this doesn't get approved, what happens to item 3?
Well, I don't know whether Mr. Kerfman will sign the agreement or not, so if he does not sign the
And
agreement.
he has to be a signatory to both documents.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Victoria.
Well, I'm looking at this, everyone, that from the exhibits that were presented on item 3, we're giving up fine revenue based on 2020 actuals at 585,234. And if we use just that number, plus the 275 that we're going to contribute this time, we're up to $861,048, or $41, excuse me. So, you know, we're practically close to $1 million right now in our court costs. Now we're gonna pile another 52.5 on top of that?
We're talking different fiscal
That's
years.
total revenue, not
Not
Sierra
just
Vista
Sierra
share
Vista
revenue.
share.
Okay, do we know, all right, so we could take that 585 and
Cut it in
47% of that? Okay, I got that, okay.
Yeah, that's the 27, yeah, that's the
And
276.
the other problem with fine revenue is it's a declining revenue source, not an increasing revenue source.
All right, I'm just looking at these big numbers and I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute.
So the fine revenue in there is from all entities. There were, in the year we used, which was the last year, we were able to get data broken down by organization. That was the total amount from about 17 different agencies. So using that 46% of the total Sierra Vista cases, that was applied to that revenue number, and that does get subtracted
Okay,
from, so they are not getting double revenue.
okay, thanks for clarifying that, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, wait
Will.
a second there. Ms. Humphries next.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just that I do agree with, I'm concerned about the precedent it sets because we're gonna make this, we're gonna agree to this contract, but that's just for Kerfman, and then whoever gets elected in the future, depending on their negotiating skills, will end up paying more or less. I don't like how this is, how we have to do this. I'm not saying I'm not voting for it, I want to share my displeasure. I agree with Greg and William. I have no solution, so I'm sorry.
William?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if we're able to, is there a way to get JP2's agreement with their magistrate,
We can, Douglas,
Douglas,
we can ask if they'll share it with
Well,
us.
it should be a public document,
public record?
public record. Now, what is the purpose of doing that?
If you look at the municipality percentage, Douglas is 50%, 50.97% caseload of JP2. And I want to compare what their magistrate is asking for based on what our magistrate's asking for. And we're at a lower
I get
percentage.
that on the magistrate part.
Gotcha.
Okay, I get that. So we know if we're in the right ballpark.
The
Exactly.
difference will be
again-
the caseload numbers.
Yeah.
And I looked at that, it's
But
about
again, Chuck,
400.
when you looked at the numbers, you made the offer of 48, you said 48 plus,
Well, it didn't, you know,
and we ended up with 52.
I was thinking that based on the situation we were in, he could have conceively asked for
For a whole lot,
$105.
a whole lot more,
And,
yeah.
You know, I knew it was gonna be more than what, Judge Dickerson had asked for, you know, in his last, go-around. So I was hoping that, you know, a good outcome would be to get around that 46% number. We're a little bit over that with this number, but that was the number I was hoping to get to.
Okay. William, anything else?
No, sir, thank you.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
Thank you, Chuck, thank you,
Mr.
Victoria.
Mayor, I would point out to Councilmember Benning that the Douglas Magistrate contract may not be apples to apples, because if you look at page 2 of Exhibit A, the total caseload for Douglas is about 4,500. The total caseload for Sierra Vista for JP5 is 10,053.
Yeah, I
So
just
those
saw
judges
that.
are gonna get paid
Yes, ma'am.
differently.
I agree. I just saw that, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
Just want to clarify, so, trying to get caught up on this. So the previous agreement with Judge Dickerson, 28.7, we increased 23,000 to the new number. And so historically, there was no data for cases, but now we have, let's say, it's the same 8 to 10 cases, just like it was for Judge Dickerson, is that what we're saying? Back then, but still about the same, but he wants an increase for the same workload?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Rodriguez, the point the Justice of the Peace has made to us is that we are not talking about 8 to 10 cases, and that's
Okay.
where Chuck and I shared, we had a difference of opinion. We felt that it was the 8 to 10 cases that are solely based on city code, mostly animal control and property cases. Their argument is that it is not those 8 to 10 cases, it's actually all of the civil cases that could theoretically be cited into a magistrate court, a city court, if we were to have it ourselves, that then theoretically they would not have to handle by their argument.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, one point, that we really do need to mention here too is, there's a clause in the agreement pertaining to the statute regarding jail costs. And if we use the consolidated court and JP, we are not subject to the jail costs that could be assessed to us if we operated our own court. None of those costs are cranked into the spreadsheets and the work that we've done prior to this. So that is a real wild card, and it could be a really big number.
And the other thing about that is, we do the transport costs.
Yes.
However, if you've been to the police station, we got 4 cells, chief, over there, and that is not adequate for male, female, adult population, and juvenile population. So we're talking if we're gonna do this, we got an additional cost in jail infrastructure as well. So that's another item to think about. Yes, sir.
You brought up a question, Mr. Mayor. So the land where county courts are on over off of, Paseo Pasad, what have, Salud, who owns the land?
County.
County owns it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's it's actually, most of those places are in the city limits, but it's a county-owned facility.
Okay.
I don't know why the question, what wheels were turning in the thought process.
Oh, they gotta charge us for some stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't like being held hostage, and that's how it feels, and I'll
Yeah.
go back to it.
Any other comments?
No, sir.
Okay, I just want to make a couple of comments. And this is, I apologize for my language, but we're being asked to eat a shit sandwich, basically. And nobody wants to do that. I would suggest to you that until we have time to talk with the supervisors, explain exactly our position to the supervisors, which is not going to happen between now and next Tuesday, and probably not going to happen until we do the next agreement. We need to explain to them that we are being, my opinion, we are being double taxed. We're being asked to double tax our citizens, which is not a good thing. However, at the same time, we are mandated to be able to provide the justice services that are required. And right now, with an uncooperative county, and I'll use that word, on this issue, they've been cooperative on a lot of others, but on this issue, they're not apparently cooperative. We have some work to do in the near future by talking to the supervisors, by talking to the other cities, and making sure that they understand our position and support our position. And in a longer term process, I think we can be successful in persuading the county that we are being double taxed, and while it may be cheaper to do it this way right now, it's not necessarily the right way to do it. And we need to do a better job. But again, it's going to take some time to work with the other cities. It's going to take some time to work with the county to try to get an agreement that doesn't leave a bad taste in our mouths. And I think that's what all of us feel right now, is we're having to eat something we don't want to eat. And it's not necessarily the best agreement, but it may be the best agreement we can get at this time. So we got more work to do, is what I'm telling you. And I don't want to, I've talked over some strategies with Chuck, and I don't want to put those out in the public yet. But this is obviously something we need to work on before the agreement will expire in 2 years. So I just ask you to consider that when you're thinking about what your vote's going to be on Thursday.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm still very upset about this. I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, if Judge Kerfman does not sign the agreement, then what? Isn't he bound to take those cases in JP5, whether he signs some agreement or not?
I'm not going to make it a judge. I'm not going to publicly make it a judgment on the judge. But
Well,
I
see,
know,
that's
he
what-
swore an oath just like we did.
You know,
I'll say that much.
I'm just looking at it and I'm just saying,
I know. I understand the
you know,
disgust.
obviously, both the county and Mr. Kerfman are playing hardball. Let's hit it out of the park. I would just as soon table this until we have more time to discuss this.
But I don't think the county is. I think the county's okay with the 276 or us paying our 46 to 47%.
We're talking the supervisors are immovable right now.
I think they're okay with the 276. I think Judge Kerfman isn't going to sign the contract, and that's the holdup right there, is who all the judges have to agree to the contract. And I think the county is okay. You're paying your fair share based off our formula. They're okay with it, and they don't want to deal with either trying to figure out how to raise that 105 or whatever they have to do on their end. I don't know, but I don't think the county the supervisors are the ones doing this or pushing this. I just don't think the judge is signing, in my opinion. And that's what I got out of our last meeting, and I still have that opinion. So I don't know. I agree with Mr. Johnson. What if the JP5 doesn't sign the agreement? Then what do we do? We're back to where we're at. So we're where you say we're at. That sandwich.
Well, the thing is, this has got to get. What I'm basically saying is we need some type of. The way I look at this is we almost need to have an interim agreement till we can get the other political parties on board.
Roger.
And when I say political parties, I'm talking the supervisors and the other city councils. And that's not going to happen between now and Thursday, or now and probably December.
All right, well,
So the question is, what do we do? What do we do with an interim agreement?
Well, what I would suggest is that we change this to a 1-year agreement and then work hard in the interim.
Well, it's a 1-year renewable, right?
I thought it was a
Mr.
2-year
Mayor,
agreement.
your city code states that it's a term of 2 years. So
That's dictated by city code.
you're 6 months into it already, so it's a year and a half.
So we're basically looking at a short timeline already, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, this is gonna be a tough one. So take some time, study it, ask lots of questions. Okay,
Quick question.
go ahead. That's what
So
we're here for.
paragraph 2, subsection B.
Are you in section?
Which
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the contract
which contract?
for Mr. Kerfman.
Item
Item
four.
4, I'm sorry. Magistrate be removed from office by mayor and city council for cause, only cause. But the magistrate may resign his appointment within 30 days. So if he resigns because 6 months in, he doesn't think he's fair, or he wants more money, then we're in the same situation we're at now. Can we add a clause in here where if he resigns within 30 days, or a 30-day notice, that I know in the education system, you pay $1,500 to break your contract, and it's a 1-year contract. So we're still not liable. I mean, we're still
Vulnerable. is what you're saying.
vulnerable and in that sandwich situation, even with the contract as written. I'm not saying he wants to resign, but
Now, is that, need to ask you, is that kind of standard phraseology, and was that in the last agreement as well?
It's standard, Mr. Mayor, from an employment contract. I used the template from our HR division, so.
I do think it's a different situation because we're dealing with an elected official and not an employee per se.
And for cause could be any myriad of reasons.
Can you say that again, Mayor? Pro Tem?
For cause could be a myriad of reasons. It doesn't,
That's true.
yeah, so basically, whatever we think is
it's
And I
called
is
also have,
cause.
You're more concerned about him saying,
him saying, I want more money, I'm out of this contract.
yeah,
Because we're still bound, and that's the problem we have. He's an elected official for 2 years at least. Our contract has to be good to him for 2 years at least. So if after a year, he says, it ain't worth 50,000, I want 100,000, he has us hand tied. Because all he has to do is 30-day notice, he's out of the contract, we don't have a magistrate.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Benning, that specific term, I believe, was taken directly from our code. The rest of the agreement is based on a template from Human Resources, but that part came from,
The Bravo? Okay.
yeah.
and,
Greg.
let's see, paragraph number 3, compensation and payment, it also says, city shall also pay mandated federal and state employee benefits for the duration. What additional, I mean, maybe 52.5 is the start, and
We'll
then
have
there's,
EREs.
huh?
We have EREs, so you have.
What are we paying for his Arizona retirement system?
Mr. Mayor,
Or
Councilmember
is it
Johnson, we're not paying into the retirement system, so the way this is worded, any benefit that is currently paid by the county, we are not paying for that, which would include the retirement system. This is what we're required to pay for any employee, like workman's comp, or FICA, MICA, and
Okay.
so on. But if the county is already paying him a benefit, like health insurance or retirement, we are not paying any of that.
Okay, all right, just want that clarified.
But we are paying the taxes on the 52.5.
It's the employment taxes
Employment,
would be
ERE
required
taxes,
to pay.
gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions? Discussion. Thursday's gonna be an interesting night. Okay.
Well, we have it on the record, Mr. Mayor, and that's what I wanted.
That's the important thing, because should we unfortunately get in a position, which I don't foresee right now, into litigation, at least we've got the record that we brought these points up and had discussion on them, so. Okay. Any other questions? And that should be the end of the meeting, right?
Yes, sir.
Didn't we have future discussions?
Yeah, we got that coming up here. Report on recent trips, meetings, future meetings. It's the next item. The next council meeting is to approve the budget. It's gonna be a special meeting. Can you explain what the thought process was for that, Mrs. Yarborough?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Chuck and I will be out of town starting July 21st, and so we wouldn't be here for the July 22nd meeting. We are required by state law to have your final budget vote and your property tax hearing within a certain time frame. Included in that time frame is the requirement to advertise to the public, including in the newspaper. And so those advertisements had to be scheduled for July 4th and July 11th in order to make the timeline for the total budget timeline. So there will be a special meeting on July 20th at 4:30 p.m. There is no work session that day. There's no Thursday council meeting. Your agenda for the July 20th special meeting will include the final budget vote, the property tax hearing, and we did have one liquor license that came in that will be included in that meeting as well.
Okay. Anything else on, I haven't gone anywhere for trips.
I went to the MPO meeting, Mr. Mayor, and I want to commend our representatives on council that attend and the other representatives. They're putting in a lot of work, so we're doing really good things.
Great. And Mayor Pro Tem is the chair of the MPO, so
Roger.
hopefully she's keeping them straight.
Oh, yes,
And
sir.
that last guy, I tell you. Okay. Anything else? Future discussion items and council requests? Yes, Greg.
I know we've just lost a valuable member of our economic development team for the city to CECOM. And I know we're going to be seeking a new person. One of the things we talked about at our strategic planning was an economic development commission, an economic development advisory board, an economic development something to augment and help the city staff in all their efforts. And I'd like to see that kind of bubble to the surface as a talking point now that we've through the budget process.
And Chuck, I think we said August.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a work session scheduled on that topic, Mr. Johnson. in
Okay,
August.
soon, I hope.
Yes.
August.
August?
It'll probably
Okay,
be, hopefully the first work session.
okay, thank you.
I thought we'd said that before, so did you have something else?
No, sir.
Anybody else? Okay. That was the future discussion items and requests for council. Do we have any requests for council? All right, then we'll hopefully see you guys all on Thursday.
Yep.
And it's good to finally have a full dais.
It is.
And
She went to the bathroom. She's here.
She had to go take a quick break, but I mean, it's nice to have a meeting where we got everybody here, we see everybody
Yes.
face to face.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. Seeing nothing else before the council,